Don't be surprised at the things that you allow. Hey everybody, this is Pastor Justin Walker with The Whole Truth. We are going through the entire Bible from Genesis all the way to Revelation. We're not skipping anything, and I want you to come along with me. So how do you do that? First of all, grab a Bible. That's the biggest part. Turn it open to Genesis chapter 19, and we'll pick up in verse 12. So Genesis 19 and 12. Then as we go through the video today, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave me your comments. I don't care what you think. I do love your comments. I want them. Leave them down below, and I'll be happy to get back with you and reply to you. I love hearing from you. It encourages me to know that somebody else is watching and paying attention. So make sure to leave me your comments down below. Now, in Genesis chapter 19, we're dealing with the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. We know the story, but we saw yesterday, in yesterday's video, we saw the sin of Sodom. If you need to see that, go back to yesterday's video. But the story right now, we're in the middle of the story. Lot, this is Abraham's nephew Lot, is in his house. He has brought these two angels. I don't believe he knew they were angels, but they've revealed it to him at a certain point. They're about to, at least. And so they draw Lot back in the house. Lot's house had been surrounded by the men of the city. They wanted to rape the angels. Lot had went out and tried to send them away, and they would not go. Lot had made that awful offer of his daughters, which I believe is completely sinful and totally wrong. And the men didn't want his daughters, and at this point they turned on Lot. They said, we're going to do worse to you than we were going to do to those men, certainly implying that the men of the city knew what they were doing. They knew it was so wrong. The angels reached out the door, drew Lot in the house, struck the men with blindness who were outside of the house. They were still, for a moment, or at least a time, they were still reaching for the door. And we pick up in chapter 19 and verse 12. Then the men, this is the angels, okay, then the men said to Lot, have you anyone else here? Son-in-law, your sons, your daughters, or whomever you have in the city, take them out of this place, for we will destroy this place, because the outcry against them has grown great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. Well, in verse 12 and 13, you see exactly why these two angels are there. They have been sent there to check out the city and to destroy the city, and I believe also to save Lot out of the city. And so they say to Lot, get whoever you love, your sons, your daughters, your son-in-laws, go to them, tell them that we're going to destroy the city, get them out of the city. Well, look in verse 14. So Lot went out and spoke to his son-in-law who had married his daughters, his sons-in-law, who had married his daughters, and said, get up and get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But to his sons-in-law, he seemed to be joking. You get the picture? Lot, it's the middle of the night. The men had been struck with blindness, so that Lot is under the protection of God. He runs out of the house, runs to his through the city to his sons-in-laws, his daughters' husbands, and he's waking them up in the middle of the night, banging on their door probably. The Lord is going to destroy the city, get out of the city, but they thought he was joking. Can I say something that's hard to hear, but it is true? Sure I can, because I'm the one sitting in front of the camera. Don't be surprised at the things that you've allowed. Can I just say a couple of blanket statements for a moment? Don't be surprised when your teenager gets into your alcohol. Y'all know I hate alcohol, so don't be surprised by my statements. I don't like alcohol. It's no good for you. But don't be surprised. I'll tell you, probably, 10 times or more in my time in the ministry has someone who told me that I was wrong about my stance for alcohol and saying, keep it, just stay away from it. It brings nothing but trouble. Those same people have also come to me upset because their teenagers were getting into their alcohol and they had teenagers. I'm telling you that as a youth minister, I dealt personally with young men who were alcoholics before they were even 18 years old. Don't be upset if you're going to do it. Don't be upset. Don't be surprised when your family follows suit. Mom and Dad, are you ready to hear one? Don't be surprised when your teenage boy starts looking at stuff on the internet. If you're watching movies that you know you ought not be watching, and watching television shows, Netflix shows that you shouldn't be watching. I mean, if your children, they know what you're watching, they know what you're doing. If they see you participating in it, if you're watching what ought to be rated X but's rated R or TVMA or whatever, and you're watching nude scenes and people are saying the F word, well, don't be upset. I remember a few years ago there was a mother who cussed all the time, and she regularly told me that she saw nothing wrong with cussing, that she was an adult and it was just language, it was just a formation of words and it didn't matter. But it was when her little child, her little 6 or 7-year-old daughter, started saying the F word, and she was saying it at school, and it was embarrassing to her mother, and her mother was saying, I don't want her talking that way. And I'm telling you, don't be surprised at what you allow. Lot raised his family in Sodom. He knew what was going on. He was bothered by the city, and yet he left his children there. He left his family there. He raised them there. They married inside of there. So why would they think anything different? When Lot comes to them and says, the Lord's going to destroy the city, why would they take that seriously from him? I know that that's a hard word, but it's a true word. Listen, let's flip that around on the other side and say it this way. What you do is important to the people that you love. The way you behave, your work ethic, the things you say, the things you watch, the things you permit are important to your family. Be cautious what you do because others are watching and they will follow suit. Well, look, his family thinks he's joking. That was in verses 14, in verse 14. So in verse 15, when the morning dawned, and the angels urged Lot to hurry, saying, arise, take your wife, your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city. And while he lingered, the men took hold of his hand, his wife's hand, and the hands of his 2 daughters, and the Lord being merciful to him. And they brought him out and set him outside the city. So it came to pass when they had brought them outside that he said, escape for your life. Do not look behind you, nor stay anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountain, lest you be destroyed. And then Lot said to them, please, no, my lords, indeed, now your servant has found, now your servant has found favor in your sight, and you have increased your mercy, which you have shown me by saving my life. But I cannot escape to the mountains, lest some evil overtake me and I die. See, now this city is near enough to flee to, and it is a little one. Please let me escape there. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. And they said to him, see, I have favored you concerning this thing also, in that I will not overthrow this city for which you have spoken. Hurry, escape there, for I cannot do anything until you arrive there. Therefore the name of the city was called Zor. That was a mouthful, but I hope that you kept up with the story. Lot is lingering. He ran around, tried to grab his sons, his son-in-laws, his daughters, and their families, and he tried to get them to escape the city. They thought he was joking. Lot comes back, but what do we see? The angels are urging him to hurry. Then Lot is lingering, and they have to grab him by the hand and take him out of the city. They put him outside the city and said, go, we are going to destroy this city. May I say a second thing to you? I believe that many times we don't see the urgency of salvation. Friends, the end of a sinful life is destruction. The end of sin is destruction. Sin brings death. And friends, for many people, they are still in their sin. They've not been forgiven of their sins. Maybe you're watching this and you've not been forgiven of your sins. Know this, that when the Lord comes, and he is coming again, he is coming suddenly. He is coming as a thief in the night. You need to be prepared, because God will judge this earth, and his judgment will be swift. Do not linger. I would also say that what we see of Lot lingering also proves a point. Sometimes it is hard for us when we've got our lives in a routine and we've been set in a routine. Our whole life is wrapped up in something, and we may know, Lot knew, we may know what is wrong with the surroundings that we have, but yet we still find it so hard to leave. Lot was obviously finding it hard to leave. He's not fast enough. It reminds me of my kids when I'm trying to leave the house, and I'm like, get your shoes, put your shoes on. You got to get your shoes on. And all of a sudden I see somebody coming down the hallway on a hoverboard, and I'm like, get your shoes on. We've got to go. It kind of reminds me of that. Here's Lot and he is lingering, and the angels are saying, get out. So they put him out of the city, and they say, flee to the mountains. And Lot says, please don't send me into the mountains. Let me run into this little city over here. We know later that it's called Zor. And they said, okay, fine. Go into the city of Zor. Now let's finish up until verse 30. So look here in verse 23. The sun had risen upon the earth, and Lot entered Zor. And then the Lord rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from out of heaven. And so he overthrew the cities and all the plains and the inhabitants of the cities and what grew on the ground. But wife's Lot looked back behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. And Abraham went early in the morning to the place where he had stood before the Lord. And then he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward the land of the plain. And he saw, and behold, smoke of the land, which had went up like the smoke of the furnace. And it came to pass, when God destroyed the city and the plains, that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow, when he had overthrew the cities in which Lot had dwelt. Now there's a couple more things I want to say. First of all, pay attention to the fact that Lot's wife looked back. They ran to the city of Zor. As soon as they get there, the sun is coming up, and the angels begin to call down the judgment of God, and fire and brimstone are raining from heaven upon the city. And yes, it is consuming and destroying the city, its people, its crops, everything. It's destroying the entire city, because these people had become so wicked, and God was destroying them for it. And that is the end of sin. It is destruction. But here's the thing. Lot's wife looked back. Now, I know that our initial reaction is to think that she looked back curiously, but that's really not the implication that's given. It's more like she looked back longingly. Now, I've witnessed this in my own life. Persons who have been delivered and who have been saved, but yet they seem to revel in their past life. And when they talk about the sins that are behind them, they don't talk about them in shame and with their head hung low, but sometimes I see it almost seems like people who claim Christ stick their chest out when they talk about their old life, or maybe they laugh about the things that they used to do as if it was so much fun. But friends, we know that a life of sin is never pretty, and it never ends well. As a matter of fact, I can tell you from experience that over and over again what we find is that sin looks fun, and it might be enjoyable for the moment, but it is not lasting. It is fleeting. That's why it's so addictive. That's why people have to keep trying to gain it over and over again. That's the problem with drugs, right? Is that I remember DARE. I know they don't do DARE in school anymore, but they should. And I remember in DARE when I was a kid, what they taught us was that the reason someone kept going back for more drugs is because they were trying to get that first high. They wanted to get the feeling of the first time that they had got high, because the feeling is fleeting. It goes away. But the joy that Christ offers you is eternal. The life that he offers you is eternal. And so we want to look forward to the life that the Lord has offered us, rather than looking back at what we've left behind. We're glad to have left that life behind. I stand with Paul. I consider all my accomplishments but dung. What's a degree? What's schooling? What's knowledge? What's your accomplishments? What's your medals? What's your trophies? What are they worth in the end? If you look at the book of Ecclesiastes, what we see is that in the end, we all end up in the same place. We're all going to die. But my life in Christ is eternal. So everything else, it's a loss. But with Christ, we have eternal life in him. So we started the story with Abraham. Remember, the angels went with Jesus. They went to visit Abraham, the pre-incarnate Jesus. God came to visit Abraham. 2 angels were with him. Abraham was talking to God there at the end of that meal, but the angels had went ahead. They went on into the city. That's how we ended up with 2 angels in the city. Now the end of the story is Abraham gets up and he looks down that direction and he sees the smoke rising up from the city. And what do we see? Is that God had remembered Abraham, and he had sent Lot out of the midst of the overthrow when he overthrew the city in which Lot had dwelt. God had saved Lot and his family. And may I say to you, God will save you as well. You know, this entire earth one day will suffer the destruction for its sin. But God will save you. He will deliver you. That is salvation. It is found in the person of Christ, and you can have it if you'll put your faith and your trust in him. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed today's video, and tomorrow we'll get into Genesis chapter 20. I'll see you then.